So we've spoken about the feminine before, and we've spoken about revolution before. We've spoke about the inversion and the clown world stuff before, but maybe there is one of the ambitions of my literary work is to take all the genres of literature and allow males and females to have discourse throughout all the different genres, or the masculine and the feminine. And I see that there's a lot of work to do to give females story and to put females in story. That doesn't mean masculinizing them, but making them present throughout all these different genres. So is there not some sort of work to do to give more female stories, give more representation of the feminine? And in the rush to do that, that's the problem that we're seeing, is that people aren't really honoring the feminine. They're just trying to represent the feminine within the mold that already works, being the adventure story, being with what Disney does with that one Southern Pacific Islander movie. I can't remember, Mona or something like that.
Yeah, Moana. So I think the problem that it's inserting itself in a whole few other things happening at the same time. So it's not just that this is happening, and like I said, it's that there's a sense in which the I can never say this word, fetishization of the stranger is part of it too, right? The idea that we love things that aren't us more than us. The idea that it's like, it's okay. Everybody wants to be a Buddhist. Everybody wants to go to India. Everybody wants to do all the things that aren't your own story, except for your own story. So it's okay to be anything except for what you are. So that's actually a how can I say this? That's a bigger trope, and the idea of the switch between genders is just one aspect of this larger situation, and it really has to do with the problem of kind of reaching the edge of a world, like reaching the end of something, where all of a sudden so you saw that, like, for example, the Romans during the 3rd century crisis or whatever, they had that problem where all the young people were dressing as barbarians, and they were trying to imitate their own enemies, because it's as if their culture was like running out, or as if they were so they took it so much for granted, maybe, that then they were just looking towards the outside, and so it's all part of that. And so it also has to do, so it's not just that, it also has to do with like sexuality, which is that the idea that we want all types of sexuality except for the one that produces children is also part of that, right? It's like all types of sexualities are okay. The only one that's suspicious is the one that produces children. And so it's just this constant, it's a general pattern of basically running out of steam, and then coming into something which would be the upside down, coming into the edge of an identity, which is its opposite. So that's what it seems like the masculine feminine thing is just one part of it. Mm-hmm. But it's all happening together and at the same time.
There was this election last week or something like that, and the results didn't favor a certain group, and they took to the Twitter to shake their fists. And what they ended up doing was two things, and I kind of joked about it because it was really interesting. They're saying critical race theory doesn't exist and is not in schools, and everything is white women's fault, which is critical race theory. Yeah. So they're practicing critical race theory, saying it doesn't exist, which is really interesting while they're doing it, and then blaming the white women. Everybody's blaming the white women. And you see that, I'm reading White Shift by Barry Kaufman, or Mr. Kaufman, I can't remember his first name. And he gets a lot of flack on that because he's just talking about ethno-nationalism and how America has kind of passed the baton through all these different stages of who's a native and who's an immigrant, and it's always changing, and what is white, what is not white, and how do we make a harmonious. His whole argument's about making a harmonious state with all these different cultures, all these different ethnical groups, which kind of break down. But because he's arguing on behalf of harmony, he is trying to say that white people have a reason and a will and a definite evolutionary desire to propagate and to conserve their culture, and that's seen by generally progressives as him being for an ethno state. The white is demonized, just as in the past, I guess the white was angelicized or put up on a pedestal now. And there's got to be some sort of harmony within all these different groups where we don't want to have an ethno state. We want harmony across all these different nationalities. And maybe the idea of the stranger is getting in the way of that, and inverting that is the wrong solution to that. Yeah.
I mean, I agree that inverting it is the wrong solution. The difficulty is that things always exist they just always exist in hierarchies, and so the problem of the race problem is too messy. It's also like, I hate the race. I just don't like that that characteristic. Like, I don't like using that as a frame, but because it blinds people, can't see straight, they become all emotional, and it just becomes like a weird thing. But let's think about it in terms of language, for example. So in America, there's a hierarchy of languages. There's, the English is the first language, then Spanish is the second language, and then there's maybe other people that speak other languages, and that just happens that way. And so there's nobody, for example, trying to stop you from speaking your language, which is something which has happened in the past. And we can recognize that as as, for example, in Canada, we had a desire to eliminate native people here by stopping them, by assimilating them completely into culture. And so it wasn't so much about race, it was about culture. It was like, let's just get them to stop speaking their language. We'll remove them from their family. We'll train them up as nice Canadians. And that way the problem will go away because they'll all be assimilated into that culture. Well, that doesn't necessarily work either, because you end up creating residues and remainders that are completely, that become, how can I say this? They become bitter towards the system with reason, and therefore then you have someone inside who has every reason to not like you, but is inside the system. But in a normal hierarchy where it's like, it's just normal that there's a majority, or there's a certain aspect of a culture which is has more authority, and then it just lays itself out from there. So it's the same. So you can think about that. That's how even, let's say, the Roman Empire probably kind of laid itself out in that way, where it's like, okay, where the Roman Empire is there, you still have your own gods and all your things, but we'll have our temple, but there's a normal hierarchy which sets itself up. It's messy. It's not. Obviously, sometimes there'll be violence, and it's not a perfect system. But trying to make everything the same doesn't work, because it's not possible. So the only way to try to make something the same is to make it upside down. And that's always what happens, because you have to overemphasize the weaker parts of the hierarchy. And by doing that, you inevitably have to demonize the authority, or demonize the center, or demonize the thing which is giving the identity. And so you end up with an upside down hierarchy as soon as you try to do that. So equality, like the desire for equality, leads to inversion.